Welcome to How Does Your Garden Grow? We're here today at Weston Nurseries with Annie Stewart for vegetable gardening for beginners. Have you ever wanted to grow your own veggies but you just don't know where to start? You will be introduced to the very basics of growing today for your own food at home. This is really popular with the 20 to 30 something crowd now, so let's get started.
All right. Good morning and welcome. It's actually spring today. We're all very excited here at Weston Nurseries. And I'd like to welcome you to Beginner Vegetable Gardening. My name is Annie Stewart. I have worked here at Weston Nurseries about 4 years. I started out as a cashier and now I work in marketing. And I coordinate a lot of the classes and seminars. And my favorite class to teach is anything about growing vegetables. So earlier in the year I did seed starting, which is my other favorite topic to talk about. But today we're going to talk about starting your own vegetable garden. Now I talked to some of you before and it sounds like we've got a lot of new gardeners here, which is very exciting for me because I remember what it was like to be a new gardener. It's a little bit scary, it's a little bit exciting, but there's lots of opportunities to grow something great and play in the dirt. So without further ado, we will get started. So now that it's spring, it's actually a little bit warm out, we can actually start to plant some different things. And right now, you can plant your cool season vegetables. So it's about late April, early May. Your last chance of frost in this area, which is zone 6A or 6B, is going to be about May 10th or 12th. Could be May 1st, who knows with this year that we've had. The Weather Service thinks it's going to be early May. So you're pretty safe with some of these cool season vegetables. You don't want to put tomatoes out quite yet. We want to wait a couple of weeks for that. But for now, you can do things like lettuces, kale, you can do broccoli, you can do some of your spinaches, so anything that's kind of leafy. You can also start to put seeds in the ground, such as peas, some of your beans, and things like that too, and get those going. So behind me here, I have some different things to plant in. Obviously, one of the first things that you're going to want to do when you are getting ready for your vegetable garden is to pick a spot in your yard. You're going to want to pick a spot that gets at least 6 to 8 hours of sunshine a day. As you can see, we're right here. We're definitely getting 8 hours here. I actually might have to put up a shade cloth for some of our more tender crops that we later down when it gets to be the summertime. So 6 to 8 hours of sunlight, which means you might need to spend a couple days over the next week, nice days, going outside and checking out where the sunshine is in your yard. Now keep in mind, if you've got trees, there's going to be sunlight coming through, and that will get shady. So you want to scope out a spot to put your garden. Now, back in the old days, people used to do vegetable gardens, and they would do this huge farm plot in their back, way in the back corner. You don't have to do that to start vegetable gardening. You can start with something as small as a patio pot, container, a window box. You can do it on your deck if you have a sunny deck and you just want to grab some little things to grab there. You can grow tomatoes on your deck if you wanted to. You can also do, if you wanted to, up your vegetable garden game a little bit, is do raised beds, which are my personal favorite way to garden. A couple years ago in my neighborhood, I live in a condo association where I can't just plant in my backyard. So I organized my neighbors and I organized a community garden for us in Boxborough. So we got a plot of land and I built simple raised beds for everybody in a nice sunny spot. And I filled them up with soil. So we all had a place where we could plant that was just perfect for the sun. It was near some water and all of that. So that's my personal favorite. That's the way that I always garden in raised beds, but you can also do just the simplest thing, even something like this. You could even have just a bowl of lettuce on your patio table like that. And then you would just snip that as you go, cut and come again, and then you have fresh salad all the time. You can buy this as is. If you wanted to get a little crafty and plant one yourself, you could totally do that too. So that's a really easy way to dip your toes into starting veggie gardening. So placement. The other thing you want to consider is water. if you put your raised beds way out in your backyard, you're going to have a long hose to water your plants, or you're going to have to haul that water. So think about that too. If you have a spigot in your yard, you want to think about where it's going to be easy for you to check the moisture levels of your soil and to water your plants when they need it too. Think about all throughout the summer what's going to be easy for you to do that. You could also, if you wanted to, set up drip irrigation too. You just run a hose out and do something like that. Takes a little labor off. It's a little more advanced. So for now, keep it simple on yourself when you're starting your first garden. I like to have something that's near where I walk a lot. So when I had my community garden, it was actually like on my way to and from work. So I would just stop and I would check on my garden plots and then I would go home. Some people like to do it right on their doorstep, right on your deck, right on your porch. If you have your veggies someplace where you're always looking, you're walking, you'll get to enjoy it more. You'll pay more attention to your vegetables. You get to harvest them a little quicker. It's just a lot more enjoyable. So think about that too. Unorthodox areas, even like your front step in your front yard, if you have a nice container, places that you're walking by all the time, you can plant there too. All right. The next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to pick the soil that you're going to put in your vegetable garden. Now, if you're going to plant in the grounds, you definitely want to think about what you're doing. You might want to get your soil tested if you've never done that before. You want to be careful if you have a well on your property or a septic field. You don't want to plant in your septic fields, obviously. So you want to get your soil tested if you can. That's actually very easy to do. You just fill a coffee can with a sample of soil. We actually do soil testing here at Weston Nurseries. You just bring the coffee can of soil to my friend Dirk, who's back there in the funny hat, and he will send it off to the UMass Extension, and he will have it tested. So that's a good way to find out if there's anything funky going on in your soil, because you don't want to be growing edibles in any soil that's got toxins or heavy metals or anything like that. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So the question was, in case anybody didn't hear it, is if you select different spots in your yard, you could do that if you're sort of scoping out the areas where you want to plant. If you have a good idea of where you're going to put your veggie garden, you'd want to select some things from that area. If you're going to be doing your lawn and you want to have your lawn tested, that's when you do many, many, many places in your yard. So you'll want to go all over your yard to check. So it's a good idea to have a nice broad sample of what you're going to be doing. Now that sounds like a lot. You can cut all of that out just by having a container garden or a raised bed, because we're literally filling it with the perfect soil. You're not having to deal with the existing soil. You don't have to dig, you don't have to hoe, you don't have to loosen it up, you don't have to add amendments. It's much less backbreaking. Nothing wrong if you are the kind of person who's a farmer, but personally I like raised beds a little bit better. So you're going to have to pick a soil to go in your raised bed if you do a raised bed or a container like that. Now we've got all the best soil here at Weston Nurseries, no lie. We are so picky about that. I don't know if you guys have ever taken the composting class here, but my buddy Patrick teaches it. He runs the bulk yard at Weston Nurseries and he produces our compost, which is actually approved for organic use. It's so good, he got it certified, and he is passionate about soil. So I'm going to say first things first, Patrick's compost mixed with some loam makes an awesome garden blend, and that's what we filled these raised beds with. It's a little chunky because it just rains, but Patrick's compost is made with his special recipe. He produces it every year, about twice a year, and it's great stuff. It's really nutritious. He spends hours taking temperatures and pouring over it and blending it and mixing it. So we actually do sell his compost by the cubic yard. We also sell it in compost bags that you can fill up yourself and take home with you. And then he produces this garden soil, which is a mix of his compost with the high organic loam that we produce. So all of this is recycled. You know, it's good for the environment. He's a genius about producing soil, and he loves it. And this stuff is great. I'm actually really excited to have it for the first year in one of our test raised beds so that I can actually try it out with growing my vegetable garden. We're good buddies, so it's great. He produces the soil, I grow the vegetables. We have a great partnership here at Weston Nurseries. It's exciting for me. So that's that stuff. You can also, if you have something smaller, obviously you don't need soil by the cubic yard. If you're filling up one of these, you could get compost in a bag if you wanted to. We sell compost from coast of Maine, which I don't know if anybody's heard of this. They're actually up on the coast of Maine, and they use, all of their soils are organic. They use forestry leftovers. They have this compost called Penobscot blend, which they actually use the shells of lobsters, and they compost that in for additional nutrients. So you could use that compost and then maybe mix it in with some potting soil, some perlite, some things like that to make it fluffy. They also do produce a container blend, which is great for this too, and you can grow your veggies in it because it's OMRI certified and it's organic. So it's great for growing veggies, whether you're going to do it in a pot, a container, one of these cool earth box things, or even just a window box you could grow some herbs in too. So that's my little spiel about soil. It's important. Yes?
So the soil that's in there this year, does it all have to be replaced next year, or do you just amend it?
I'll probably amend it. We'll probably add more compost to it, maybe a little bit of peat and perlites, but really, like, we filled it up. The vegetables are going to get their roots in there, and they're going to soak up some of the nutrients and deplete it a little bit. No problem. I'll just take a couple of bags next year of Patrick's compost, and I'll stir it back in there. Or I'll take a little handful every time I dig a hole and put it in the bottom of the hole before I pop the plants in there too. So it's very easy that way. So once you fill, your initial investment with a raised bed is obviously a raised bed itself. You want to get something good quality, and then some soil. So it's a little bit of investment up first, but then it's there. And then you just have to add a little bit. Yes, so is that question?
Okay, maybe, I'm sorry, maybe you answered this, but you said if you get the Patrick's compost and you mix it with loam, what would be the percentage of the compost?
So what Patrick does is, I believe he does, we do like a third ratio, so it's 3. So he does 1/3 compost, because that's really rich and heavy. It's like chocolate cake. You don't want to have that all the time. And then he mixes it with the rest of it loam. I think he's going to add perlite to it as well. So those other 2 parts to make it fluffy, freeable, give it a little body. Like when you use a good shampoo and you get body to your hair, it gives the soil some body when he adds some loam to it. So, so yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Yes, another question.
Yeah, and perlite. The perlite or vermiculite, or what about peat moss? How does that affect it?
Peat moss or perlite, vermiculite give the soil some air pockets. So it's what we call, there's actually a word for it, makes it freeable. So your little young roots can actually tuck their roots and give some space between that heavy soil so that they can get in there. It actually allows the soil to breathe a little bit more so that there's a good oxygen exchange. So that's why we like that. It also helps with drainage and moisture retention as well. So you'll see lots of different soil formulas on the different bags, but really the principle of soil is you get a good nutritious balance like a compost, you get something to give it body, and you give it something to hold in moisture, and that creates a texture to it. So that's kind of what you're looking for with the soil. And hopefully you want something organic as well for your planting soil. So there's that. So then you get your soil, you got your garden beds, you've picked a beautiful spot, you got your water ready, maybe you got rain barrels, maybe you got a hose ready, maybe you've set up drip irrigation, however you want to do it. Maybe you're just lugging watering cans out there every day. Maybe it's right next to your house and you just like spray out the sink out the window or something like that. Whatever works for you, honestly, just have fun with it. Then you're going to want to think about layout. You're actually going to start putting your veggies in the garden. And this is the fun part. This is where we get to dig in the dirt. We get to think about where we're going to put our plants and everything like that. So when you think about your traditional vegetable garden, all in rows, straight rows, straight rows. So you can go up and down. And it's very organized that way. And that's kind of the way we tend to think about planting, because plants have to have a certain amount of space. So you'll see even on seed pack, certain space apart from each other. Doesn't have to be that way. We've always thought that way because that's how farmers do it. Farmers with big tractors, and they're going down the rows in their fields with their equipment. They need room to drive between the rows. You do not have to plant in rows. It's actually kind of better if you don't. You just want to have enough space around your plants so that they've got some elbow room and that they can soak up enough nutrients for themselves. So, you know, if you have plants like, what do we got here? Broccoli. Broccoli needs a set amount of space around each one. And let's see, this one actually, instructions are usually on the seed packet or on the tag. So our friend broccoli here, this is a Pac-Man broccoli, and the information says full sun 18 inches apart in rows, about 36 inches apart when they're mature. So you want to give this thing a little bit of elbow space. So I would say, so that's what the 18 inches means, the 18 inches between each one. And then if you were doing rows, you would have like really wide rows. That's a huge waste of space. You don't have to do that. You can actually have your broccoli in little groups. So I like to think of planting in grids rather than rows. When you're beginner vegetable gardening, if you're doing something like this in here, it makes it so much easier to take care of. When you plant your veggies a little bit closer together, they also protect each other. They protect the soil underneath. They help, the shade from their leaves holds moisture into the soil. It can't evaporate as much. If they're closer together and you don't have big open spaces of soil, it's also less chance of you getting weeds in there too, because the vegetable plants are taking up the space. So my friend broccoli, I would probably pick like a corner of my garden, and I would put in maybe, I put a few of them in there. I'd probably give them like a foot space each. So, you know, I would put one like right here, give him some space, and then I would give him about 18 inches, another space here, another space here, like that. So that's where I would pop my broccolis into. So you can spread out a little bit. Now that's quite a bit of space. It doesn't mean it has to be all broccoli here either. You can mix it up if you want to, experiment, try things. If you want to have just a broccoli section, so you just know that's the broccoli area, that's fine. I've also mixed and matched when I've planted containers like that in an earth box. I did a couple for snappy dogs in our parking lot for them to grow some vegetables and hot peppers, and I kind of arranged it almost more like a window box arrangement with flowers mixed in too. So you can do that as well. So I could plant my broccoli, but then I could also get some pretty petunias and tuck them in the side and fill it in so that it looks more like a front yard garden rather than relegated to the backyard. The other great thing when you mix and match, like we know with companion planting that some plants do better with others. Have you guys heard of that before, companion planting? The classic one is you plant your tomatoes with some basil, and then you put some marigolds in there. So those three all help each other out. Obviously, tomatoes and basil are awesome together. You have your pasta sauce or bruschetta right there in a pot. They also look great. The tomato is nice and tall. It grows up on a vine. You've got this leafy basil filling out around it. And then you tuck in some marigolds just to make it look pretty, but it also attracts pollinators. So if you tuck flowers into the edge, not only does it make your vegetable garden look like a beautiful front yard garden bed or a window box or anything like that, if you tuck annual flowers in there, it attracts the bees and butterflies that actually, they will go to the flowers in the vegetable garden and they're like, hey, well, I'm here. I'm actually going to pollinate these squash blossoms and these tomato blossoms as well. And then you get more fruit that way. So your garden, your plants all work with each other to help each other out. Then it just looks awesome. One of the things when I started my community garden, some of the non-gardener neighbors were concerned that it was going to look like, you know, a big mess or whatever. Well, I actually had just started working here, so I brought home a bunch of flats and annuals. I gave them to all my gardeners. I gave them seeds. They tucked them all in. We had dahlias in with the tomatoes and cucumbers. We had marigolds. It was gorgeous. People were like stopping to stare at the garden because it didn't look, no hate on just a regular veg, but it looked full and beautiful and exciting. It also makes it more enjoyable for you to come and spend time there too. You can just hang out and enjoy your pretty flowers and the butterflies and the bees. It helps nature out to do it that way. So that's companion planting. You can fill up this whole thing. When you don't plant in rows, you can actually fill up a lot of space. A 4x4 like this, if you lay everything out in grids, actually it's a little more than 4x4, you can actually get quite a big harvest out of that every year when you think about it. You plant your cool season crops. By, say, June or July, those are mostly done. You turn it over, you put in tomatoes, your peppers, and things like that. And then you get a whole nother harvest. And then when it starts to get fall again, you can do the cool season crops again. So we'll have kale and things like that in there. You can actually get 3 big harvests out of that. It's a surprising amount of food that comes out of just a small space like that. So you don't have to, it doesn't have to just be a one-off kind of thing. Even with the earth box, something like this, or a window box, you can rotate your crops in and you can get pretty big harvests out of that. One of the other classes that I teach sometimes is square foot gardening, which is this grid principle. And what we say in square foot gardening is you can actually, a 4x4 raised bed can actually produce enough food for one person to have a salad every single day in the growing season, plus side veggies at dinner every day too. So that's a pretty good turnout. If you do your bed a little bit bigger, you can actually feed 2 people. You can actually get a lot of food out of a small space that way. It's easier on you too. It's not as much care to take care of. There's no schlepping way out to the back garden to hoe and dig and weed and all of that. So think about that, using your space compactly. The next thing we want to talk about is harvesting. That seems really far off because we only just had the snow melt. We're only just planting now. It seems kind of crazy to think about harvesting, but even now you could be harvesting. If you start with some cool season lettuces like this, we have starts, but you can also plant seeds. You can actually clip these and eat these for dinner tonight if you wanted to. So these grow pretty quickly. Lettuces and microgreens and things like that grow very quickly. You don't have to wait for it to get to be the traditional iceberg lettuce head or cabbage head kind of thing. You can just let them sprout up like this and snip them and eat them like that and mix them in with your salads, your sandwiches, and that kind of thing. I have a bunny rabbit at home. His name is Poe, and he loves when I bring home flats of these. He's pretty spoiled. We get him organic veggies at the grocery store, but I'm also planning on growing some lettuces for him. And he eats fast, so I'm going to have to turn over those lettuces fast. Otherwise, he's going to like start chewing on the furniture. So, so these lettuces are actually really great. You can do spinach that way. You can do kale that way. All those great leafy things that are full of vitamins. They do. If you cut and come again, you can actually get quite a few crops out of these. So a lettuce bowl like that, you snip, and it'll sprout up again another one, and you just keep it, snip, snip. I mean, you could mow down the whole thing if you wanted to, if you were really hungry or really needed a salad. But if you have like a mix like this, which is great, with all the different kinds of lettuces, you can just snip a little bit at a time and actually eat them, and it'll just keep growing again. It'll probably start to bolt, which is when it decides, okay, that's enough with the leaves. I'm going to put up a flower. Probably when it gets hot, like June, you'll see lettuces start to put up a long stalk with flowers. That's the time to take it out and turn over to something else like tomatoes or peppers. So the bolting actually looks kind of pretty. Tower Hill actually, have you guys been to Tower Hill Botanic Gardens ever? Oh, I recommend if you have a chance this time of year to go up there. They have amazing displays. One of the things they do is vegetable gardens, and it's a kitchen garden, so it's right outside of their house building, the original house. It's an old farmhouse, And they actually did a really cool display. They let their lettuces bolt and put on these flower stalks. They looked as pretty as anything we sell out for decorative plants in the garden center. I liked them a lot, but they're not as good to eat then. They start to get a little bit bitter. So you can get a first harvest in with cool season crops. Starting to, yep, sorry.
Like, we have sometimes we have wild rabbits that come in the back.
Mm-hmm.
How can you put that like out in your back and keep the rabbits from eating?
Something, if you have a bowl like that, put it right on, like if you have a patio table or on your deck, do that. If you have rabbits that nibble, you might want to put it like nearer to your house type of thing. The other thing you can do, and let's talk about pest control a little bit, because that is an issue. There's a couple things that you can do. There's my philosophy with pest control is there are physical barriers. You can use sight, and you use smell. So those are usually the three things that keep pests away from your vegetable garden. So in my community garden, what we do is we don't have a fence around the whole thing because that would have been way too expensive. So we take chicken wire and we make, when you have a small space like this, you could actually make like a chicken wire dome, almost like a cake dish, like a topper kind of thing, like a glass dome. You can make something like that out of chicken wire that actually goes right down on top to protect it. So that's your physical barrier. You can also scare them. They don't like shiny, sparkly things. It makes them nervous. Birds, rabbits, little squirrels, deer even. I like to go to the dollar store and you get those Mylar pinwheels or even Mylar balloons, strips and ribbons that are shiny. And you stick those in around your garden area or you tie them on and they flutter in the wind and they move. Animals don't know what this strange sparkly thing is. It makes them nervous. So you want to stick those in, but you want to keep moving it around because they get used to things. So this is another thing. You'll be this silly gardener having fun out there, playing with your pinwheels, moving everything around, checking on your plants, watering them, clipping your lettuce, spending some time in the garden. The third thing is the sensory thing. So it'd be smell or taste. There's lots of different things you can use for scent to ward off animals. It depends on the animal. You can do anything from, in the garden center, we sell like coyote and fox urine granules. And you sprinkle that around. It makes them think that there's a predator around, so they stay away. It's actually not too bad for humans either. It doesn't smell that awful. People really can't smell it. So the other thing is, like, if you've got like little mice or things, they don't like peppermint oil or clove oil. So you can actually like put that in little sachets or packets around your garden to ward them off. One thing is squirrels. If you have squirrels or rabbits, they do not, and I will tell you this, my rabbit, he does not like spicy things. He's very fussy about taste. He doesn't like citrus or cayenne. He's gotten into like a couple things in the house and So, you know, citrus oil around your plants. There's also like a hot pepper spray you can spray onto, I mean, really anything if you need to protect your tulips as well, to spray onto your leaves and things to keep them away. And they'll give one nibble and say, So that's pest control for your little furry critters. For insects as well, there's also, we have organic sprays such as neem oil you can use. Depends on the insect that you have. Same thing, you can do barriers to protect your plants. You can also do sprays and things like that to do pest control. So those are those three things to actually help your vegetable garden along, to keep pests out of it and only people eating your vegetables. Ooh, it's a little dry out here. What was I thinking? The other thing is, so we did where to place it. We did soil. We've talked about layout. We've talked about harvesting. We've talked about protecting from animals. So we've gone over most of the basics of that. Let's talk about some things that are really easy to start with. That's actually one of the main questions that I get when I'm just hanging out, when I'm doing my seed starting. It's actually one of my favorite things when we have the seed display first out. We'll always get a family or a mom with a couple of kids, and she wants to know, oh, you know, what's easiest to start with? you know, what should I plant? What's fun for the kids to plant? That kind of thing. Obviously, you guys aren't kids, but I think when you're a gardener, you're kind of a child at heart too, because you're spending time in nature. So, so some of the things that are really easy to plant, and I've actually got them on the list here. And one of the first ones is salad greens, which I went over. Those are so easy. I mean, you just put them in a bowl like that. You can actually grow them from seed as well, and just get like the little microgreen sprouts too, which are really tasty. Just the tiny, tiny, tiny little ones. Those are delicious. We do. Yes, we do. We sell them in the bowls like that. We sell seeds, and we sell them in packs like this as well. We actually have them in front just so we can keep a better eye on them. Well, the weather's still iffy. Yes.
Can you plant the seeds outside now?
You can.
Okay.
So some of them are early season. You can plant early. So seeds you can sow right now. It's really the soil temperature more than the air. So if your soil, you can get a soil thermometer, but if it's nice and warm, if it's, I believe 55 or even like 45 is okay for the cool season plants, you can sow your seeds too. So not only can you plant starts, like actually dig holes and plant things, and you can actually start to sow your seeds. So right now, a lot of these things are things you can either plant right now as starts, or you can plant them as seeds too. So we'll go over some of those. So we did salad greens. Those are great. You can just sprinkle those in. So I pulled some out right here. We have seeds from Botanical Interests, which I really like. These seed packets are really great. They've got great illustrations on them. Tons of information on the back. All about when to sow, how to do everything. When you open it up inside, they actually have information printed on the inside as well about the history of the plants. They have recipes inside. So that's a lot of information packed into these. I think that they're really thoughtful in the way that they do this, so I like their products a lot. So here I have some lettuce seeds. They're very, very tiny, so you're not going to want to try to plant one at a time. I would pick an area or a bowl if you wanted to do a dish garden. You'd open this up and you would sprinkle them in, and they'll start to sprout up, and you can actually start to clip them when they're microgreens and eat them when they're like tiny, tiny, tiny little sprouts, and you can put them on your salad. You can wait till they get a little bit bigger and cut and thin them out, and they'll just keep going. And there's quite a few seeds in this. Like, you really only need like a couple of pinches to fill up a salad bowl like this. So this will last a long time, and you can almost do that all year long too. So you can do this inside with grow lights as well. What else do we have here? What did I pull? Oh, here's another lettuce. This one's pretty. It's got ruffles on it. So you can mix and match too. So you can get a couple different packets of lettuce, and you could actually mix those up. So you can plant those now. The other thing you can plant now by seed, which is one of my favorites, is carrots. You can do carrots now. You want to make sure that your raised bed is deep enough. So you want at least like 7 inches. These ones I picked, these are Danvers, which are short. These are great for raised beds because they're little stubby carrots. I like to sow my carrots. I don't do them in rows. I just do a sprinkle in an area. And then I will actually also sow radishes in there too. The radishes come up a little bit quicker. They grow a little faster, and they're kind of companion plants. So you can mix and match those. And then every day when you go out to your garden, once they get going, it's awesome because I love radishes. I don't know if everybody else does. I would practically walk out there with a bottle of like blue cheese dressing, pull them out of the ground, wash them off, and just sit out there and have myself a picnic with radishes and blue cheese dressing. It's so good. Carrot greens are also great. My rabbit Poe really likes the carrot greens for obvious reasons. So those are good, and they grow pretty quickly. They will probably be done by about June or July, and then you can plant something else in that spot. So you're using that spot really economically. So you're switching them out. The other things that you can start to plant now, you can plant some of your seeds like, let's see, what do we got here? Ooh. All right, beans and peas. These are the penultimate awesome ones if you've got kids or grandkids around that you want to plant with, because they're so easy. Obviously, they're big. They are just like you buy them at the grocery store, beans and peas. There's so many varieties. They're really fun to grow. They grow fast. So you can plant these now in the soil, and they will start to sprout very, very quickly. So right here I have shelling peas. They will grow. You want to sow these in early spring, it says right here. These you want to wait a little bit, maybe a week to plant the beans. They're a little fussier, but peas you can sow early, like literally right now. When you guys leave, I'm probably going to sow a bunch of peas in here and put poles up. So these are actually, and you can just plant these right in the soil however you want them. They do get tall. So if we're thinking about things like your taller plants, this is where your placement comes in. You want to think about, so this is the south where the sun is. We don't want our tall plants to block the rest of everything else. So I'd probably plant these on the north side of my bed and put stakes in there. And then they'll get nice and tall. And then eventually we'll have all kinds of peas and beans growing out here, and my coworkers will come out and they will harvest them, and we will have salads and lunches, and we'll have like a little potluck maybe or something like that. So it'll be really fun for us to do that. So those you can plant now. Let's see. So my chart here has the different specific timing for when you can plant. And that's pretty much, that covers most of the basics. You've got everything from beans, broccoli, beets. You can see when you might, if you were going to start them indoors, when you would have wanted to start them indoors, but you can also straight plant them outside when it's good to do that. Now the beans say July. I think you can pull that off a little bit earlier. I think you would be okay to plant beans as long as it's a little bit warmer. Broccoli is another one, cabbage, carrots, kale and lettuce you can see are much earlier. Onions we can plant in the garden early, so early May, late April. So here's some onion starts like that. If you like those are good because you can actually use the greens, the stalk of it, and you can actually produce more onions for yourself and then store them. The things that you want to wait a little bit longer for, and you will see we'll start to get them in here at Weston Nurseries probably in the next couple of weeks, are things like tomatoes. We'll get tomato plants in, we'll get eggplants in, we'll get peppers. We'll start to get some of the, like squashes and things like that, cucumbers. You'll want to wait just a couple more weeks for those, but you can start to plant those probably the first or second week in May is safe. And just keep an eye on the frost. So every night you'll want to look at the weather. This makes you pay attention to the weather, and you want to see when the next frost is. Here at Weston, we do that compulsively. We check like 5 different weather channels. We argue about whether there's going to be a frost or not, because that means that we have to, take care of all of our tender plants out there this time of year. So we call it the old Yankee hustle, because we have to take all of our plants in and then put them back out, and then take them all in and put them back out. We're always watching the weather, which is good. So let's see, some other favorites. So, sorry, yes?
So you've got everything in the ground.
Yep.
What can you put over that if there is a frost?
There is a frost? So that's a good question. So if there's going to be a frost, you're looking at the weather, not the next week. We're supposed to have beach weather next week. It's almost going to be too warm for planting on Tuesday or Wednesday, I think. But if there is going to be a frost, we usually pay attention, like if it gets to be below 40, that puts us on alert. If it gets below 35, we know we need to bring them inside or cover them. Honestly, you can just go out with a sheet and some rocks, and you just cover your plants with a sheet or some rocks. If you have little seedlings, you'll just want to cover them. That's most of the thing with frost, is it's actually the condensation of the water, of the dew on the leaves, that then freezes in the morning at like 5 a.m. is usually when it gets the coldest. And that's what we want to protect them from, is the condensation, because then they won't freeze. If the soil is warm enough, they're usually okay. It keeps their little roots warm, so they're happy. It's okay if they're a little chilly on their leaves. They just get a little nipped on their leaves. But other than that, what you can also do is, here's my water bottle I've been sipping at this whole time. You can actually take a water bottle or a liter bottle, and you can make a cloche out of this. So what I would do is, when I'm done drinking it, if I'm not going to recycle, which I would normally recycle it, I would cut this part off, and I would put it over the plant, just like a little greenhouse. Yeah, so you can actually, if you do it this way, you can actually, I've grown plants this way too, is if you cut off the bottom this way and put it over your plant, then you can open up the cap to let it air out too. So if it gets, it's like a little greenhouse. So yeah, that's one trick. That's actually one of the tricks I learned my first year gardening. And I had my husband saving all my liter bottles that we used. He was like, "Sweetie, what are you doing?" I was like, "I'm gardening. Leave me alone." And sure enough, there was a frost. I had all my bottles, and I put them out over the. He thinks I'm crazy, but now I work here, so it paid off. Yes, the question.
About squashes. If you wanted to put squash in there because they're so large, how do you
give them space?
Squash will
Oh yeah.
the whole thing. So what do?
Them
trail out?
Oh yeah. So there's a couple things you do. Give them space first of all. You know, if you want to do a whole bed of squash, you can go right ahead. Zucchinis get really big, so you'd want to give them like almost 2 feet of space for their leaves, and then they spread out. Cucumbers will crawl out of the box and crawl across your yard and try to steal your car. They're so like aggressive with their vines. So you can let them do that. You can also stake them up. There's a big movement now with vertical gardening. Yeah. So you see those trellises we have over there? Stick one of those in nice and sturdy, and you train your squash up a trellis. So you can actually, as the squash grows, you would just pick up the vine and you would wrap it around the trellis, up, 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 up. You just have to make sure that it's in there sturdy, and you can actually get them to grow vertically. And they look very pretty that way too. They'll develop, you know, big fruits, and then they put the flowers on. People will think, "Oh, what's that beautiful tropical vine you're growing in your yard?" No, it's a cucumber. So there's that. But otherwise, you know, it's totally okay to just let them kind of go wild, you know. I have a guy in my community garden who he went a little too crazy with the cucumbers one year. The cucumbers, he had a bed this size, and they were all spilling out, and they were like, they were going on a walk. They were like going down the rows. They were visiting other people's gardens. They were just on and on and on. Very happy, totally fine, you know. We harvested them pretty regularly, so it was nice. So cucumbers are another fun one to grow. Zucchini, any kind of cucurbits is the word for them. Squashes and things are really great and easy to grow. So yes.
For cucumber, I don't know, a couple years before I grow cucumber, they sprout a little bit. This much small, they just train to the they want to straight up, you know.
Oh yeah.
Their skin is just tiny that is not like the good cucumber. They can keep going.
Yeah, yeah. They get to be funny shapes. Cucumbers are big water hogs and nutrient hogs, so you got to keep them well fed. People come in sometimes with like really funny like round cucumbers or curly ones or long ones. Some of them is the variety, but a lot of it is the actual growth. So these, like when you get these big fruiting plants like cucumbers, squash and things, they eat a lot. So you might actually have to supplement some fertilizer in there or extra compost in there to feed them. We have a product from Espoma called Garden Tone, which is great, just a little extra boost for some of those plants. But they will, if they don't get fed and watered regularly, they'll get a little fussy and they will grow funny. Still edible, make some cool shaped pickles, I guess you could. But yeah, you can actually, they'll get kind of funky looking, still edible, totally all right. I mean, it's not like you have to enter your vegetables into the state fair. They're just for you to enjoy. So, and it's all an experiment. So that's that. So do we have any other questions? Yes.
I mean, there's a number of things a beginning gardener can do wrong, but are there common questions you get, like, why are my leaves yellow? Why do I have blossom end rot on my tomatoes?
Mm-hmm.
The most common questions you've got from okay, we've got everything established, we're not at harvest yet,
Mm-hmm.
but like a yellow leaf, I mean, what's the first thing one checks?
One checks. So, like the question, if everybody else heard this, was yellow leaves, blossom end rot, things like that. Those are actually pretty common questions. And a lot of that is, you know, honestly, I had my Home Depot book with me out there in the garden. Now, you know, you have Google. You can actually look up and take pictures. But yeah, blossom end rot is one of those. That's a nutrient and water issue. You're gonna it's gonna happen. It's okay. You know, you're gonna have yellow leaves. That could be anything from a nutrient deficiency or overwatering. When you're gardening, you're gonna spend a lot of time checking your soil, checking your vegetables, looking at these things. If you have a question, the other thing is on these sheets, I also put my email. You guys are now my gardeners, so you can always come ask me by email any question that you have. You can come to Weston Nurseries. We're here for you if you want to ask questions like that. The whole exercise is to be observant, spend time in your garden, enjoy being outside, try new things. It's okay to make mistakes. You know, you're not, like I said, you're not entering into the state fair, but spend time in your garden. You know, actually stick your fingers in the soil every day. Right now, it feels kind of cool and moist, so I know I don't have to water, but if it started to get kind of dusty tomorrow, I would come out here and I would water. So, you know, it's just spending time, it's getting your hands dirty, that kind of thing, you know, so it's about having fun. I would recommend either a couple of websites, the Weston Nurseries website. You can always get in touch with us on that. We have actually a little tab that says Ask an Expert. You can ask your question. You can email me directly. There's a lot of really great informational websites too. I learned a lot from davesgarden.com. They have a lot of gardeners of all experience levels on there. It's like a forum with questions and answers, and people discuss things. Great way to find out information if you have a picture of a funky cucumber, or you need to know why are my leaves yellow. There's a lot of really friendly people on there who can answer your question. Another one is get yourself a good book, a couple of good books on vegetable gardening that you feel, I mean, there's even a lot of good kids books about vegetable gardening now, but you know, just a good book to have with you, you know, a couple good websites bookmarked on your phone, and that's really it. So don't be afraid to get in touch and ask questions too. Like, we love to talk about plants and gardening and soil and all that.
After this, you'll be harvesting your own crops very soon. This is Deb Moore for How Does Your Garden Grow? Thank you for your precious time, and make your life bloom.